All right. Holy cow. Welcome to Friday the 13th in Houston, Texas on 90.1 KPFT Houston. This is Free Thinker Radio.
Friday the 13th. Yeah. Interesting day at that.
What's going on, Johnny? What's on your mind? What's happening? Yeah, today does feel like an off day. If you're just tuned in, Micah's just talking about another cancel. We're going to have to get into all the cancellations because for those who are new or just tuning in, this is Free Thinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston. My name is Derrick. We're here with Micah. We're here with Johnny. We're here at KPFT. We're wiping everything down with Purell hand sanitizer, trying to stay healthy and taking our vitamin C and washing our hands and doing all that stuff. In case you haven't noticed, the city is a little different from when we talked to you last week.
Yeah,
the country is a little different. Micah, you went to the grocery store earlier?
I stopped by on my way. I stopped by Disco Kroger over here on my way to the station, mostly to get something to drink. I hadn't eaten lunch or anything. I didn't have time to get pizza, so I went there and I couldn't find a parking spot. Was when I first noticed something was up because I almost always just swoop in because nobody's at the grocery store at 2:30 in the afternoon on a weekday. And get a spot. We've never had a hard time getting a spot there, and the parking lot's full. I had to wait for cars to get out of my way. I was like, "What's going on?" Oh yeah, and then I realized that if they weren't at home short selling the stock market, they were probably buying groceries. Whoa, that was serious stuff. And yeah, I'm not joking on that though. It was serious.
We're going to talk more about the financial side.
And the bread aisle was kind of wiped out. The spaghetti sauce. What's the deal with spaghetti sauce? Everybody just goes out and gets spaghetti sauce when a hurricane's coming. I guess so. I
think people want to cook the easiest things that are available to them, right?
Yeah.
Noodles.
Yeah, because you might not have power once people quit going to work.
I do think that a lot of this is
spring is coming. I'm glad you brought that up because I was like, what do we do in the face of this since we don't know what changes will occur?
I bet all those people who never got involved in the community garden were wishing they were right now. Like, dang.
Yeah, that's important.
And so we're covering this. So for those who are unaware, the city of Houston on Wednesday, the mayor, Sylvester Turner, did declare a state of emergency for the city. This doesn't mean anything completely major yet, but it does mean that most events...
So we shouldn't be alarmed or concerned.
It's kind of a mixed message. We're being told that, we shouldn't be freaking out, which I think is... You're going to hear that reiterated. Nobody here, of all the information we're about to cover coronavirus related and not, we're definitely not telling anybody to flip out, to freak out, or anything like that. But we also think there's a lot of important information that you probably aren't hearing in the mainstream that needs to be discussed in an important context without freaking out and flipping out. But the reality is, yes, Houston is under a state of emergency. Fort Bend County has declared a state of emergency. Montgomery County has declared a state of emergency. Galveston County has not yet. Harris County has not yet.
So they didn't quarantine the world leaders like we suggested last episode.
We did suggest that last episode.
We gave you a jump on this.
Well, and interestingly enough, Micah, it seems like it's kind of happening, right? Because today, the president of Brazil, they said that he's got it now, and he just met with Trump yesterday.
That's what I'm talking about.
Trump and Vice President Pence were at the CPAC convention a couple of weeks ago, where people we know for a fact now people there apparently had it. So it's not that far off to imagine that they actually do have it, or some of the leaders do have it. And I use that word leaders very loosely, of course.
Well, self-proclaimed. Well, not necessarily.
Self-proclaimed or I don't know what you want to say.
Selected down.
We're definitely dealing with a situation that is much different than last week. Back to the grocery store situation, just on a very kind of realistic thing. If you're driving right now, it's 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. If you haven't been to the grocery store in a couple of days, it might be a good time to go. This is just a suggestion from your friendly friends.
You don't have to buy
Free Thinker Radio.
But you might want to scope it out.
Well, even if you're not thinking like, I need to hunker down or whatever.
As soon as you go in there, you're going to buy things, though, because you're going to be like, oh, my God, what if this is my last chance to get Cheerios?
Well, I went to the Whole Foods off Kirby. That's where I just came from. They were out of meat. They were out of eggs. They were out of bread. They were out of hand sanitizer. And they were out of toilet paper. Yesterday, I went to the Kroger off I-10 right here near downtown and the Sprouts. Both of them with lines out the door. Both of them also out of those same products. And Micah was talking about the Kroger right here in the neighborhood where we're at. I mean, I think it's not unwarranted to say that people are getting nervous about this. And Michael, what are some of the reasons people are nervous besides getting sick? I mean, there are other reasons, it seems like, right? Like looking at the reaction maybe from the government.
I think, it is a little bit. I think you can feel it when you go in these places. One, there's more people. So you sort of, I don't know, there's stores I won't go to that are typically packed, because they're always so crowded. Now, more of the grocery stores seem crowded. The shelves are thinning out, so it creates this sort of feel that you might not be able to get something. So it's a very emotional thing if you pay attention to the way you feel when you go to the grocery store with this. I think going to the grocery store and everything, it's a very emotional feeling thing anyway, but there's a lot of things to feel like the cookies are thinning out. And
Well,
it's serious.
besides
And you said toilet paper was thinning out, and there's no eggs at the Whole Foods. I mean, why would these businesses choose to miss the opportunity? They're not. This
they're
is
just
just what happens when there's a
they're
little bit.
running out. Like every store I went to, I asked, "Do you know when your next truck's coming?" "Oh, maybe tomorrow, a couple days after
Maybe
that." Yeah, exactly. "Do you know when you're getting more toilet paper or more hand sanitizer?" "No, we don't." Like, I mean, so we're dealing with a very real situation, and I know we're gonna. It's just in our nature to kind of joke and laugh about things, but we want to make it clear that without the panic, it definitely is important to be very aware of what's going on. I mean, we're dealing with a situation where Spain, Italy, parts of the United States are on lockdown right now. They're
parts
under
of the United States are on
of
lockdown.
what some
No
people are
joke.
calling medical martial law. Now, you might not like that term, but the fact is they're on quarantine where they're unable to leave their homes. In Rochelle, New York, the National Guard is going door to door to serve people food. Well, they're already threatening jail time in Russia, Italy, and in the U.S. They're saying that you could face up to like a
And
certain
if you
amount of
choose not to
fines
go to jail,
or up to a year in jail after you've healed from whatever you may get.
what
So
if you choose not to go to jail?
well, I guess you might face stiffer penalties than that, you could say. But I mean, so we're dealing with a situation like I have a buddy from Italy who I just talked to a couple hours ago, and you can take it for what you want, but he said we are under martial law. These are his words. This is a man from Italy, so it's his interpretation whether you agree with it or not. And he said we're not allowed to leave our homes. We're being, stuck in our homes. And again, we want to hear from the callers. Like, is this something that you think is a good response? 713-526-5738. Is it blown out of proportion? What we worry about, I think, here universally, maybe on our show is, and we've talked a lot about this, that the state tends to take and individuals tend to take any opportunity they can to use a disaster. And in the words of Rahm Emanuel, former President Obama's one-time advisor, said, "You never want to let a good disaster go to waste, right? You never want to waste an opportunity to do things." He specifically said to do things that under normal circumstances you wouldn't be able to do.
Exactly.
So now we're in a situation where because people are so afraid of getting this or that or it's spreading, well, okay, I guess I'm willing to give up some civil liberties. Micah, there was an article in the
What civil
USA Today.
liberties are you willing to give up, Derek?
Freedom of, maybe none of it, but I mean, this is what they're asking
Yes, I
people:
hear you.
freedom of movement, freedom of speech. Like,
Yep.
well, I want to tell you guys about this article that was published in USA Today yesterday.
Freedom of
It was in
association.
the newspaper and online, and it was said, and I never heard this, Micah, but it said the government is planning to dust off long shelved plans that seemingly violate constitutional grounds, whatever, right? And
It's always seemingly.
seemingly, right? And it's just interesting because
Let us show you how it's not.
the message was basically saying that you need to be prepared to give up certain liberties that
For security.
yeah, it's that old thing right there, right? And I'm looking at another story here. This is and again, we're just giving you information, right? Like a U.S. computer scientist, I can read his credentials if you want. He says that based on his estimates and his research, that the U.S. will be in complete lockdown in 9 to 14 days. He said that on Monday. So, that's one person's analysis, right? You take it for what you want. But what I was saying with the USA Today article is they're drawing attention, and I posted this for those who follow Freethinker Radio on Facebook. It's on the Freethinker Radio Facebook page.
We are live streaming.
It's on our Houston Freethinkers page. We are live, of course, on 90.1 KPFT always, but we're also live on D Live at the Conscious Resistance, YouTube at the Conscious Resistance, Facebook at Freethinker Radio, and Facebook at the Houston Freethinkers.
Yes, we're Facebook at Free Thinkers. Appreciate all your comments everywhere there. It allows us to basically reach a larger audience and increase the dialogue because obviously we don't know everything about all these subjects and we want your input. We want to hear from you both on the phones at 713-526-5738 and on the various streaming platforms. We spend money out of our own pocket to try to increase the dialogue because we love it so much and we love KPFT. So we do have a caller. Do we want to?
Now MOD's gonna have to wait, brother, for a few minutes. We just got so much to cover. I know we still want to get into some local,
Yeah,
but
keep him
I
waiting.
just want to reiterate. Look, so there are folks, Micah, that I'm hearing who are saying, look, it's just like the typical flu. They're exaggerating. This is panic buying. The media's blown out of proportion, and so they're doing nothing, right? And then there's the folks who are the other way, who are saying, look, they're lying about the numbers. It's much worse in China and Iran than they initially let on, and it's about to get a lot worse or could get a lot worse in the United States.
Well, these people, what gives either one of them validity? Like, I can understand either camp having some people with validity in it, and I could see either camp just saying anything that pops to their worldview, right? Now, if somebody just came back from Iran and they showed me pictures and video of them, burying mass amounts of people or something like that, I'd have to go, oh my God, there's more validity to your story. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Well, I think that there are some valid points on either side, honestly, because it does seem like the Chinese government did initially try to cover up how much, when it started, perhaps. And there are, I mean, you can see stuff on Twitter and other places where people within China were able to get information out. There's a doctor, a Chinese doctor, who was publicly arrested and kind of reprimanded for speaking out really early whenever it was first happening. There's a doctor who tried to whistleblow in the beginning. He ended up dying later of the coronavirus, or at least that's what we're told, right? Then you have reports like this that this is from the Independent from the UK. It says only one hospital bed for every 6 seriously ill U.S. patients in the event of a COVID-19 surge. So the thing is, if it does get worse, they're expecting mass overwhelming of ICU beds and just hospitals not being prepared to take on
so it
the
is
amount of people who
serious
get
to do
sick.
what you can.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at the dentist the other day, Monday or Tuesday, and my dentist even said that their usual suppliers for face masks at the dentist office are out because of everything going on. So, Micah, just a little bit from the USA Today article. The recent actions highlight little known and rarely used powers of government to narrowly limit the movements and interactions of residents at the expense of individual liberties. Those powers are in addition to flexibility granted to governors who declared states of emergency. State and federal authorities are dusting off long shelved plans to force Americans to stay in their homes, ban public gatherings, including sporting events, close schools, and restrict travel in ways that seemingly violate constitutional protections. I mean, it's a really interesting article to read, but basically the message that is being pushed is you need to give up some of your individual liberties for the collective public health. And this is something that we've heard about before in different ways, Michael, when we talked about, say, mandatory vaccinations or other things. And I think it is a little bit problematic and worrisome. This to me is that whether or not you think it's being blown out of proportion, whether or not think it's much worse, what I am truly concerned. Now, obviously, I hope that the elderly and the people who are ill, and I have a friend, for example, who, for the people who are like, oh, I'm young, we're young and fit, who cares, right? I have a friend who had chemo a couple years ago. His immune system's extremely weak. So he's like, hey, people are basically saying, screw me because, they're just like trying to blow it off and act like it's no big deal. Well, they might carry it around and be totally fine and healthy, but then they pass it along to somebody else who's not in a position to be able to handle it. So I think that there are realistic concerns, but what I'm most concerned about, and I think what we're trying to bring your attention to today, is the response from the government that may, and it seems to be is happening already. It's worrisome,
I
I think.
think that they also learned that fear is big business, right? That like you said, not letting an opportunity go to waste. I have a couple of comments. We hear that on two different Krogers on the northwest side, things are a little picked over, but the crowd is tame. Hear that it's madness at San Felipe and Voss. Lot is full, aisles are emptying, lines are long, water and the usual stuff is gone. So think like hurricane, right? You know what you usually start seeing gone. It sounds like we're already getting reports of those. If and we talked about how it was an emotional experience, right? And so that sort of stuff makes it easier to sell more government, right? Sell more solutions, right? And now I'm not saying that it's not a time to be concerned and to think about this stuff, but we also need to be prudent and watch what we're giving up, what they're demanding, and yeah, exactly. Because we've seen that's a great point, Johnny. We've seen how like the Patriot Act hasn't been repealed, Guantanamo hasn't been closed. These things from 20 years ago are still in place that fly, in the face of the Constitution for lack of any other thing to say is wrong with them.
Yeah, and I think that's a big point to make, right? Is that when the government either takes powers or the people willingly give them up, it's very rare to see them just turn the clock back and say, okay, well, now you guys can go back to not being searched anymore at the airports. Almost everything we've seen happen after 9/11, since the Patriot Act,
Incrementalism.
we were told was going to be temporary, right? Like, oh, we're just going to have to search you for a little while because this guy tried to do this attack. Well, what's going to happen once a mass pandemic, as we're being told, spreads around? Um, and there's a lot more to cover into this. I guess we've kind of already dove in. Of course, it's important. Again, just on the local level, Houston is under a citywide state of emergency. So far, that doesn't mean schools are closed. So schools are already in spring break. It's supposed to start on Monday, but most area school districts are going to close for at least another week. Some of them for 2 weeks. The mayor is saying that they're canceling all city events that have, I think, 250 people or more at them, and they're encouraging people to cancel their own private events. Of course, it's your prerogative, but encouraging people to just be careful and cancel events that might have a few hundred people at them or more. But as of right now, the city isn't, under imposed quarantine or involuntary quarantine or anything like that. I will say that 6 states so far have called the National Guard. It's not happening in Houston yet, in Texas, but these are realities that are unfolding right now that we need to be aware of and not just sort of put our head in the sand.
Well, I think about coupling it with Ring. We're not there yet. Wait, but think about maybe they have to move one step further before they can couple that idea with Ring, and then they'll know if you stayed home or not, right?
Well, it wasn't Harvey. So what I will say is in Rochelle, New York, which is upstate New York, they have a 1 mile containment zone, right? So that's kind of like you could say it's a testing. How can they roll this out? And in that area, yeah, people are locked down. You can't leave your homes. The National Guard has, yeah, they got full on military gear like the National Guard looks, and they're going door to door bringing people food. So you can't leave your home. I mean, that's to me is a reality that just, hey, I'm a human being who is uncomfortable with living under that reality,
And think
pandemic or
about it.
not. That's just me.
Your food that you're ingesting is controlled by them then. Just saying. But yeah, there's a lot of coronavirus news. It seems to be increasingly being updated. There is more going on the local front that I wanted to get into briefly, talking about putting your head in the sand, a story that we've been following for a year that I'm glad we didn't, I'm glad we didn't stop covering. Oh yes, we're tied to the tunnels to this story as well. Turns out that it's gotten so bad that state lawmakers, over in Austin, have sent the boss of the HPD's, Art Acevedo, a letter urging him to release the results of an internal audit of the HPD's embattled narcotics division. This audit that was conducted after that raid last year. This letter was basically sent days after HPD sought permission from the Texas Attorney General to keep the audit from the public. Yeah. Just saying, like, I mean, think about it. To a free people, is it better that we are given the information and given the ability to make right judgments, or is it better that that we're lied to and somehow supposed to make decisions with not the right information? Just something to think about in these things when you see government trying to hide, redact, and not let you know while they want to know everything about you. Yes, yes. It was an internal audit of the narcotics division. I mean, he could have been part of a whole ring. Who knows what they were doing? Maybe they were controlling the drug trade in Houston, the third largest city, fourth largest city in the empire. I don't know.
I think that's really worrisome because from the beginning we've said, and I even during when I was running for mayor last year, I asked Acevedo to his face, like, hey, weren't you there? You claimed you were there within 15 minutes, right? So you saw everything that happened, and I just feel like we haven't quite, and we know this, we haven't gotten to the bottom of the story, not only on what the cops that are being held responsible for, but what Acevedo and other officers may have known. And as you're saying, guys, like this particular story could be one piece of that puzzle of getting more information out, more details that reveal a much larger picture of what's going on within HPD.
And this is similar to what we see with I mean, I'm not trying to tie it too much to another movement, but we see with the Me Too. At first, it comes out as allegations, right? And then they dig deeper, and there's more people that have been, affected. As we've seen with the Goins background, we've seen multiple people already found innocent, many thousands of cases being reviewed. So, yeah, in the face of that, why would they want to hide a audit? So it gets into this a little bit more in the article that I referenced for this did come out of the Houston Chronicle. And there's a lot more to get into with it.
Well,
But
while we're talking local, and just sorry to hop back a second, it does relate to the coronavirus. I forgot to mention this, but it kind of ties into what you're talking about there, Micah, which is basically lack of transparency. So the counties, all of the counties around Houston, Harris County, Galveston, Fort Bend, and Montgomery, and a statement yesterday, they said they weren't going to release information about how many people they've tested so far. So for those who are kind of concerned about, again, whether you think, oh no, there's a lot more people sick and they just don't have enough tests to show us, or they're just choosing not to test it, they're not even going to tell us how many people they have tested. Not even like, okay, we found this many cases, because we know that there's only a handful of cases in Houston, but they are refusing. They said they're not going to release any data about how many people will be tested in this. So it's just there's a lack of transparency from the police department to the health department to the mayor's office, and and on and on and on in the city of Houston.
the main reason that they argue, at least the most plausible reason that they argue for not releasing the internal audit, is because there are ongoing federal and state criminal prosecutions against Goins, and HPD doesn't want to jeopardize those cases. Do you believe that? I mean, do you believe that?
Oh, they're afraid of jeopardizing.
Yeah, the cases against them, that they were somewhat reluctant to perhaps even begin. I mean, it's not really, I don't know. I can understand that, but if a state lawmaker is demanding the audit, I just don't see how you can tell them no. How's this chain of command thing work? I don't know. Anyway,
Well, hey, you want to go to some music? We're about
I
halfway
love
through. I think we
music. I
just
love
blasted
music.
through the first half hour of the show. I know we got one caller who's patiently waiting. We want to have more calls. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this whole quarantine situation, the state of emergency. Yeah, hopefully they're
Put
listening.
us on in your car as you go to the
They're
grocery store as you have to drive around the parking lot.
they're either listening through 90.1 KPFT, they're watching through YouTube, or watching somewhere else. But wherever you're at, if you do want to call in, 713-526-5738, 526-5738. We want to hear from you and your thoughts. Even if you don't live in Houston, call in and tell us what you're thinking. What do we got coming up, Johnny? What are we going to play? All right, let's get to Ganesha, and then we will be back. This is Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston. Lots to cover. Stay tuned. Oh, so fucking Best Buy didn't have it. They only had 6 foot.
Yeah,
I don't
you ain't
think.
getting it now, the
Hey, do
virus.
you think 10? I don't think 10 foot's even long enough, right?
No.
We need like
Like I said,
20.
15 or 18, yeah.
I can't find it. The longest I can find is 10 foot.
Maybe you could connect them together.
That's what I was
Hey,
thinking.
they're delaying a primary in
I saw
Louisiana.
that. Yeah, see, now it's starting to affect the election.
Can't elect people.
Huh?
I bet
Dude, no,
Primary's
I
delayed.
saw. Okay, I thought it was really funny because I was listening to the Rush Limbaugh show or whatever, and he was just going off. He's like, the Democrats are so dumb. They're basically about to let this coronavirus just skip Bernie's shot. He's like, they're screwing Bernie again, and
Because of the
he's like,
coronavirus.
this time they're just doing it in public. They're just like, because they said let's just skip the rest of the election. I'm gonna answer this call. It's like let's just skip the rest of the primary and give it to Biden. Because of the coronavirus, we can't gather all these people to have them, so we'll just give it to Biden. And then they're like, Bernie's like, no, like, yeah, I still want to finish my race. Like, I'd like to
Yeah,
complete.
we could at least do it on TV or something. That we make some compromises here.
Stupid.
What are these drugs? Vitamin
my
C,
drugs.
solar ray. What's that?
That's a
Candy?
superfood, a moon booster.
Where's the
These
good
are all.
stuff?
This is like
None of that looks
10
like.
times more vitamin C than one orange,
Oh,
and
I
like
had
a
one orange.
teaspoon.
I had one orange. This guy, he's got the stuff. I did have one orange. I was afraid it wasn't good anymore, but it was. Thank goodness. I love oranges.
Right. They're telling us it's hot mic. We know the mic's hot. Listen to music.
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking it was coming through on the. Oh, we have to put it.
Yeah, I never could find that GMO song.
Day Eater.
I got it.
What? They're picking up. I just think they're picking up. Both of y'all on that mic.
Want to go to another song now?
Sure.
Yeah.
I get that 4-year-old. No, it's too loud. Turn the
Just with a label. Do you want GMOs? Well, what the GMOs? Global hunger is the sign of man. Reach out what you want, so we're in command. Get it, don't see the qualities. Come to us, begging, we got what you need. So just in your face, and on your plate. Always been the that the way you're gonna say. See the mind of you, like I'm not of you, and I check my battle. I know what I'm doing. Do you want GMOs? Oh, well, who want the GMOs?
Okay. All right. With little GMO song. Chef Monsanto from Day Eater, band out of Austin.
That song was awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty fun. They have a lot of different sounds on that album, and I hope to get to some other songs on there. I liked a number of the other songs, but I felt like that one kind of fit what we discussed quite a bit on here, and it was
There's some killer
fun.
musicians too, huh?
Yeah, they're a lot of fun, and once you see them live, I hear you'll like them more, want to mine into their music more. But you know, we do love getting into music from all around Houston and Texas and beyond. Feel free. Nice. No doubt, for sure. If you like anything and you want to get us to play it, please
comment that stuff up. Send us CDs or vinyl or whatever
If you
over
got
here
music,
at 419 Lovett Street. We want to get into it. We've played music, multiple musicians from Australia, bands from all over the U.S., and a lot of Houston acts. So if we like it, we play it. We're free that way. We get to play what we want. Thank you, KPFT Houston, for that opportunity to share the best music we find in the world.
Absolutely. Hey, Micah, so you were just telling me a story that the
Oh,
Louisiana
yeah.
primary is getting delayed, canceled.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, talk about the effects of the coronavirus. We're spreading into every story now. Louisiana governor said that he intends to postpone the state's presidential primaries. That's right, it's affecting the election now due to fears of the coronavirus. Due to fear. Not even the coronavirus. Notice that, right?
Just fear of it.
Fear is big business. Which would make it the first state to do so. See, they want to lead the way. Democratic Governor John Edwards planned to sign an executive order delaying the April 4th primary until June 20th. He described the step as, quote, necessary to protect the health and safety of the people of Louisiana from the risk of COVID-19. Louisiana also postponed elections in 2005 after Katrina and Rita, and in 2008 after Hurricanes Gustav and Ike. Early voting in Louisiana's election was scheduled to start in 1 week, but it seems like not so much.
You know, I know there's lots of other stories that people want to hear about that are going on that are just important things happening that have nothing to do with the coronavirus. Like Mike said,
33 people tested positive in Louisiana for it, and they're moving the election.
It is infecting everything, every part of our life. Like, you know, NBA's canceled, college basketball canceled, hockey's canceled, rodeo's canceled,
South by Southwest.
Well, you know, as far as people, because normally
Southwest.
I think the people who wouldn't pay attention to these kind of things go about their life, right? But then they're like, wait, now my football game is being canceled, or now, you know, and that's when it starts to affect everyday life, where the folks, and you just go to the grocery store to buy some food for the night, and then you're like, holy crap, this happened, right? And Micah, you made a good point there, though. Only 33 people are sick, and they're declaring a state of emergency and canceling the primary. I mean, it's... Yeah, and talking about the financial aspect, there's a lot of businesses that are already being affected. Bars are going to be closing down within days, if you know, not within days.
There's
if not
businesses that are,
sure.
you know, they say like an average person is one paycheck away from being homeless. There's a lot of businesses that are already, you know, negative one paycheck away from being bankrupt or broke or out of business, and people are still working at those places, taking what little money is being made in their income. I think people don't realize how precarious a lot of business is.
So the thing is, again, whether you think it's being exaggerated or it's going to be much worse, at this point, what we're seeing is government's likely going to take advantage of it and take some, you know,
effects either way.
Remove a little bit of civil liberties temporarily, they say, if they can, and at the same time, the stock market's being affected. The shipping industry, they're already saying that certain ports on the West Coast are starting to feel the effect of it. Grocery stores, if these people continue to be quarantined and told to go home, then the grocery stores aren't going to have people there to work them. The gas stations, the bars,
How long do they move the primaries and the elections, though, until you start screaming, no taxation without representation?
I had a friend who told me yesterday that if they try to cancel the election, then it's time to, in his words, hit the barricades. Like, it's time, like, that's a line they shouldn't cross. And I'm like, okay, well, I think there's some lines out there that may have been crossed already, but for this person, he was like, if they cancel the free elections, I'm using air quotes for those who can't see, if they cancel the free elections in, you know, the freest country in the world, that's time for us to rise up, whatever. I think, but that's the thing, we're already dealing with some unprecedented stuff right now. At least in our lifetimes, we've never seen anything like this.
The other examples they gave were all concrete things like hurricanes, right? Where there was an effect. The place was flooded. Schools couldn't open. It had an obvious, this is, like we said, fear of the COVID-19 virus. You know, terror.
One, I think, piece of good news that you probably won't hear much about. Yesterday, a judge ordered the release of Chelsea Manning and Jeremy Hammond, who's a hacker, which I think is amazing news. Unfortunately, it came as a response to her attempting suicide the day before. And this is because she's been held for now a year for refusing to participate in grand juries' investigations against Julian Assange. Of course, Julian Assange also being held in the UK as they try to extradite him here. And so for her, you know, standing up and for her bravery, I would say, and being willing to push back, they kept her in lockup for a year. They took Jeremy Hammond, who's one of the hackers who some may remember from back in the 2010s, who
did leak some information. He went to prison. They took him and also tried to make him participate in a federal grand jury investigation against WikiLeaks. He refused. But even though they've been released, Jeremy Hammond is now going back to prison. They're trying to, keep him in locked up. And Chelsea Manning is free, but is now facing hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines for refusing to participate in the grand jury. Think about that, Micah. We're going to put you in a grand jury, secret proceedings. You refuse to participate. We're going to lock you up. And we'll finally release you once you try to kill yourself. But then we're going to fine you for all the costs that it took to hold you in there.
Yeah, this is an individual, that probably was pretty idealistic and joined the military thinking they could do something and make a difference in the world, and then took their stand for the same reason and ends up in a, locked up for all this time. I think it's easy to understand as a human being, why they might just feel like committing suicide. A lot of people want to write someone off, They act like, nobody should commit suicide,
Like
get help,
weak or
etc.
something.
But yeah, once someone has a situation like that, they forget how to empathize and think about the determinedness around them. And what if the things around them that were affecting them had turned so dark while they only stood for what they believed in? I'm not trying to say you have to believe that Chelsea Manning's stance was right, but you ought to be able to still feel for the individual who took a stand for what they thought was right and, has been through this and has gotten to that point. And I'm just saying that for, a little suicide prevention awareness.
Yeah, and I do want to say, look, we're like you kind of touched on it, Michael. Whatever you think about Chelsea Manning, from those who, I don't really agree with her politics these days. And there are others who are like, oh, it's a limited hangout, whatever kind of operation. The point is, when you feel the weight of the federal government on top of you, I want to see how many people out there will get threatened with, you're going to go to prison or you're going to participate in this investigation against somebody, and will hold with their principles and sit in jail for a year in solitary confinement without giving in. I'm just saying, because where are you at? The rest of you are just talking online and just, making noise like, oh, I screw that person or whatever. But when it really comes down to it, you see who has principles and who stands by them. And so I'm all for her, being willing to stand up and say no. And like I said, it's insane. I don't know if you heard this, Johnny. She is being released from prison, but now she has several hundred, I think a $200,000 plus fine that they're charging her for the time that she was held. But just think about that, like the idea that you can get locked up and then they make you pay for it after the taxpayer already paid for you being in there.
And how long did individuals earn a living, for having job security because she was locked up in there? How many different people did? How many, I don't know. I can't get too far into that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, a military analyst in the Army, and already did 7 years of a 35-year sentence prior to this 1-year lockup. One other thing I just want to throw out real quick, Micah, and then I'll throw it back your way. This is just a quick note. We'll have to keep our eye on this. But while we're all talking about coronavirus, there's an energy bill being discussed within the Senate right now that it was delayed temporarily, maybe over all the coronavirus fears. But just so you're aware, in the background, there's a bipartisan. That means both parties coming together.
Getting together.
Those parties that you think are so different
to do something.
Coming together, which would do an energy bill, which would fast track exports of fracked gas. And promotes billions.
They want to frack you.
Billions of dollars in subsidies for, quote, clean coal efforts. And here's the best part: makes hundreds of millions of dollars in tax dollar money available for a geoengineering pilot project. So just a couple months ago,
geoengineering.
We were telling you that
fracking all together.
Yeah, so that's the energy bill. Isn't it funny? They call that the energy bill. Clean coal, fracking, and hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer money for geoengineering.
Clean coal, geoengineering, fracking.
For those who aren't aware, geoengineering is the mass deliberate manipulation of the climate, of the weather, supposedly, allegedly to fight climate change.
To make it warm, to kill the coronavirus.
To prevent from getting warm. But hey, yeah, maybe in this case, Micah, the climate change warming us up might
just
slow
in
down
time.
the coronavirus. Right?
Yeah.
But
metal.
Well, geoengineering is a broad science, but one particular aspect of geoengineering is called solar radiation management, which is what you're talking about, Johnny, where they have promoted the idea, again, air quotes, theory, that you could spray strontium, barium, aluminum out of the back of planes, and that this would sit in the atmosphere and it would reflect sunlight. No talk of what happens once those things fall down to the water, the soil.
Yummy strontium.
But so now there's a bill being discussed while we're all talking about other things. It's called the American Energy Innovation Act.
There's a lot being happening.
600-page bill, Micah. It's a compilation of 50 bills that they crammed into one bill. Previously introduced.
Do you think they're reading it? I mean, all those
Oh, I
lawyers
doubt
over
it.
there
I
in
doubt they have
Capitol
time.
Hill.
They're all worried about coronavirus. There's no time to read bills. You just
No,
gotta
those
pass
people
them.
there around got it.
You just got to pass them as quick as possible.
If I was in Congress, I'd have a serious situation right now.
It has hit some roadblocks, I will say. The legislation failed to gather majority support during debate on March 9th, just a couple days ago, but this debate continues. And again, this is a bipartisan effort to get this bill pushed. Everybody wants to get their, as they call it, pork in there and make sure that they're pet projects. So people want direct carbon capture, people want clean coal, and then others are saying, hey, let's make sure we get the hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars to fund geoengineering.
So when it looks like a
projects.
good legal product, I mean a good government product, a good bill, right? When it looks like a good bill, they all want to pork it up because it's going to sell, right? So
Pork.
got to get our little piece of
Stay
it.
away from pork.
The more pork they put in it, though, it could get a little lopsided and not pass. But at the same time, when they think they got a out of the park hit, they're going to want to make sure that they pork it up. So I don't know, maybe hit up your congressperson and see if they're porking it up for you.
So just be aware that this is being called, once again, the American Energy Innovation Act, for those who want to look it up on
do you want to innovate
some
energy?
of the bill websites. It's interesting.
You being
though.
left out of the conversation?
I-
I'm not joking on this.
I think it is important, though, because, like I said, we tend to make jokes about everything, but these are important issues, and geoengineering is a topic that's very controversial because they claim that it's not happening, but there are a lot of people who have paid attention to the history of weather modification and climate modification, which is a fact. The U.S. government attempted to modify hurricanes back in the early 1900s. Some say they were
Weaponize
successful.
the weather.
Yeah, the U.S. Navy put out a document in 1997 called "Owning the Weather by 2025." What year is it? 2020? Huh. Wonder if they've made any progress on that dream of theirs.
I don't know. The cell phones went really fast.
But they sure are looking for hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars to fund that. Do we have calls waiting for us, John?
We have calls lining up.
All right.
I like the idea of kind of keeping them wait because then they all blink there and it makes it feel more intense.
Well, maybe we
Let's
should
get
go
to
to a
some of
call.
them.
Let's get a call.
Let's get a. You're on the air.
Yeah, I heard you guys talking about the coronavirus, and it seems like you guys really aren't taking that seriously. And I work in healthcare, and I can tell you that we're past the point of containment with this. This is a reality, and it's going to kill a lot of people. And so, people taking it lightly is really, really, at this point in time, not really a smart move. This is going to kill over 1 million people in the U.S. this year, is projected.
Mark, was it Mark?
Yes.
Mark, okay, I'm not sure if you've been listening the whole show, but we're definitely taking it seriously enough. We were talking about it throughout the beginning that we think there are folks, like you said, who aren't taking it seriously, and folks who maybe are, panicking, which probably isn't helping much at all. But we appreciate you calling in and sharing that perspective. So you said you work in the health industry. Can you say specifically where or how?
I'd rather not, actually, but I have some insight into it. And, we've already got active cases here in the Houston area.
Yes.
And probably people people probably in the room with you right now probably have it, because we've missed the containment zone on testing it, and we've got community spread. So, people are going to have it, people are going to get it, people are going to get sick, probably people are going to die from it.
Mark, what do you say to the folks who say, so for example, I mean, obviously this is your estimation. I don't know what data you have or what, we only know so much about what you have access to, but you said 1 million people that you think are going to die. That's a pretty big, claim to make. What do you say to folks, though, that look at the typical flu season and other things and say, hey, well, this is comparable and maybe even less comparable to other things that we normally deal with, and so that's why they're concerned about hype? What do you say to that?
Well, we have a vaccine for the flu. I'll say that. So you can get a vaccine for the flu every year and protect yourself. We don't have a vaccine for COVID-19.
Okay. Do you think
so
that's
the big thing right there? And we have community spread. There's don't really know exactly how the transmission goes 100%. You only know the incubation period. You only know the actual form other than droplet of spread. But we've got community spread here in Texas. We got it here in Houston, and it's not coming. It's here.
I was curious. I was curious if you thought that the quarantine would be effective. The National Guard actions that they're taking, keeping people in their homes. Do you think that's effective, or do you think
it has been? Well, it has been effective, but we've already missed the boat on that. I mean, it's already too late. Containment would have worked. More quarantine would have worked earlier on, but it's past the point now. We're going to community spread, so you can do it, and it's going to flatten the curve some, and it may come to that. But right now, you got two camps. Everybody thinking this is a bad cold, and then some people thinking it's the end of time. Somewhere in the middle. But
yeah, I agree.
If you're immunocompromised, if you've got someone who's got cancer, someone who's got some underlying conditions, not necessarily just old people. That's what everybody's worried about. Oh, it's going to kill someone who's 85 years old. No. This is someone who, you got someone who's got an immunocompromised system for whatever reason.
I also
They're
heard
in some grave danger, so it's a big deal,
Yes, for sure. The cases in the U.S. have topped 1,000 plus, and
Well, that's just because we haven't tested anybody.
Sure.
We're testing 15,000 people a day in South Korea. We've tested less than that in the whole United States.
Yeah, we covered that.
They're doing that per day, 15,000 people.
We made sure to cover that earlier, Mark. We do appreciate you bringing that up. That we do think that the U.S. is definitely seems to be underprepared, and we also mentioned that there's been doctors warning from Italy and elsewhere that they didn't take it seriously enough, and then they saw a ramping up of cases. So we did make sure to mention that at the beginning of the show. Like I said, I'm not sure if you've been here the whole
If
time.
I missed that, man, I'm sorry. I apologize. I wasn't trying to get on you guys. I was like, man, it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And what do you think is the best thing that people can do is just individually, based on what you've seen?
Well, the big thing is, everybody's saying it. Hand hygiene, try not to touch your face, which makes you immediately want to touch your face, and just that's the best we can do right now, which is crap, but it's the best we got. So until they can offer wide testing, I mean, that's pretty much what's going to have to happen. And people are, they're already starting to overwhelm the hospital system right now. So I tell you, in a week, 2 weeks, we're going to be in a situation where these hospitals are overwhelmed here in the Houston area.
Well, one other question, Mark, well, maybe two here, is just want to get your thoughts as an individual and somebody with some experience in this field. You're saying, do you have any concerns, though, if you've heard what we've been talking about as far as the quarantining of various areas, the lockdown? And, we've got friends, again, in Italy and elsewhere who are reporting, and there are people who are pretty uncomfortable with the level of containment that's taking place, or the lockdown. Now, I know that, of course, we're concerned about the spread of a virus that could infect more people and kill other people. But what do you think about the cost of that, or does that kind of play into your decision at all? Just the thought of government seizing this as an opportunity?
I don't think anyone sees it as an opportunity. Actually, it's a matter of life and death. If it gets to a desperate point, it takes some desperate measures, and it's just sad that it may come to something like that. It's gone past a tipping point to where you have to react in such a way, and I'm not even sure how much that would even help at this point. If you quarantine people that are already sick and can't get to medical care, I mean, that doesn't do a whole lot of good, which is what happened a lot in China. You had a lot of people die who got quarantined and couldn't leave, and they died because they couldn't seek medical care. But you're not going to get true numbers out of China right now anyway.
Yeah, that's one thing we've talked about. Micah just pulled up some numbers here that are pretty interesting. What did that show?
Just by way of comparison in general, the CDC also said this season that 34 million people have gotten the flu and about 20,000 have died. About 350,000 people have been hospitalized from the flu. And as our caller said, they do have a vaccine for the flu, and they don't for the rapidly spreading COVID-19. So I kind of, I think sometimes the numbers out there make people a little bit more panicked as well. And then I just wanted to add those numbers to what Derrick was saying about the flu. And as the caller said, the big distinction that he would make is there is a vaccine for the flu.
Thank you for your call, Mark. We really appreciate that.
Man, I appreciate it. I listen to you guys every Friday.
Awesome.
Right,
I appreciate that.
And once again, you're listening to Free Thinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT Houston. This is Micah, Derrick, and Johnny here. And I think, we got another caller?
Let's take this caller.
All right, let's go to the next call.
It's our friend and colleague.
All right, MOD, we got a few minutes. What's on your mind? I know you got a lot to say.
Hello.
Hey, MOD, you got 3 or 4 minutes at the most. What you got going on?
Well, looks like I'm looking at Johns Hopkins 24/7 reporting portal, and it shows the contraction in Asia is shrunk a third. So they're on the downturn. More people are recovering than acquiring. So this code probably is taking its course, it looks like.
Definitely.
And it does spread. And it's going to hit the States. But again, if y'all go to corona.help and click about and go to the Johns Hopkins live streaming feed, you'll see how active cases in China and Asia, APAC,